Ladies, gentlemen, and friends beyond the binary, welcome to the Discourse for today, August 18th, 2023. I'm your host, Tristan. Hello. Hello, Internet. Very different host for today. Hi. My name is Tristan Johnson. You might have heard of me. I am the host of the YouTube channel Step Back, which you are, probably watching this on right now. I am also the co-host of the podcast It's Probably Not Aliens, which you probably aren't listening to the show on, but is a podcast that you probably check out. You can find Step Back at stepbackhistory.com, or It's Probably Not Aliens at probsnotaliens.com. I stream on Fridays at noon, which is right now. And if you want to support my work, you can always do so by going to nebula.tv/stepback. Or if you want to do a Patreon route, patreon.com/stepbackhistory is a way to do things directly. Nebula, you do support me, and you also get access to tons of free and awesome content. Or if you want something a little bit one time off, super chats are always welcome. They're, of course, never required, but they are nice. They are nice to get. If you want to check out my latest video is on artificial intelligence. It's not doing awesome, I have to say, so if anybody feels like, giving that some love, I would really, really like it. My next video, which I am currently in the middle of, I'm a little bit behind because I got roped into some volunteer work, which I am learning is going to take almost I got roped into a volunteer social media project, and in doing so, it has devoured almost, I want to say 7 or 8 working days out of my last 2 months. It has been insane how much that has cost me. Anyways, my next video is on hate speech and the Rwandan genocide. It's for Step Back's birthday, where I revisit an older video and either look at it a new way or do some sort of remake of it with better stylings or something. And I decided that this year I'm revisiting my Rwandan genocide video because the Rwandan genocide turns 30 next year, and I decided to double down in looking into the topic of hate speech specifically in the Rwandan genocide because it's one that didn't get the most attention in the world. So I think it'll be a really good topic. I've had some interviews with some journalists and some people who have written about and they researched extensively the Rwandan genocide, and they've been very, very kind and such. If you want to submit a question, I have a link here for questions, which I just put in the chat. So if you want to do that, you can say hello. That's where we can ask questions. I'm riding solo today, so there's only 4 questions at the moment. We will probably get through them very fast, and otherwise I'll have to figure out how to ad-lib through a couple hours. Who knows? Maybe if we run out of questions and it doesn't look like there's a lot of people here today. It's summer. Everyone's on vacation and stuff, I guess. But yeah, I might end early depending upon how things go. Either way, depends upon how big how engaged it is. Chat's pretty quiet today, so might be a quick one. Who knows? Anyways, if this is your first time watching the stream, please make yourself known in the chat. Say hello. We have an awesome chat community that have really cool and solid conversations. So if you are there, please make yourself known. Say hello. Get involved because it's an awesome little gang we've got going on down there. And yeah, on that note, then the next thing to do is talk about the wins. This is like the fastest I've ever gone through the opening spiel, I think. The wins. So this is a thing that I've been doing for the last few months where we start the stream off by talking about victories that we have had over the last little bit. So, things that are good, things that are working out well for you, things that are fun. It could be as small as you got up and had a good breakfast this morning, or as big as you getting into a fancy university. Who knows? There's all sorts of places it can go. But yeah, I will give you guys some time to talk in the chat about your wins. For me, I have a couple of wins this week, I have to say. First is, you might notice that I'm speaking probably at 0.25 speed, and that's because I am high on amphetamines right now. This is a joke. On Wednesday, I went to the doctor and I finally got a prescription for Vyvanse. And this is my third day taking it, and I have to say that everybody, when I started, don't take everyone's stories with, medication and experiences with it are different. And so, this may not be a universal experience, but everybody, when I was going into it, was like, moderate your expectations. You might not see things improve for a couple weeks or so. Just don't take things take things slow. Don't get too concerned. Instead, I took it and had probably 3 of the most productive days that I have ever had. And it has changed. It has completely changed everything. I feel so good. So I've been very lucky in how I have responded to this medication, and I feel great. I feel like I could beat up God or something. Yeah. So that's a big win. And I've also been playing a lot of Baldur's Gate, and I had a goal that I talked about last Friday that I was setting out to romance and seduce my dragon riding Klingon Dom true love, and I have done so. I have successfully, I guess not so much romanced as been claimed by the by my barbarian. I guess default she's a fighter, but I reclassed her as a barbarian. Alien illithid fighter person. It's been great. What's it called? The best pair up ever. The dwarven monk and the Githyanki barbarian. The two frontliners run into each other. It's been great. Oh boy. Wow, I'm really feeling good. Okay, let's see. Oh, we got some wins in the chat. Let's see. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie was surprisingly excellent. That's awesome. Ninja Turtles was never a thing I was into personally, but I am glad that it's a good movie. Because, every time now that a movie comes out that's just trying to rehash a, old franchise for to make money off nostalgia, I get very skeptical, but sometimes they're good, and so that's always happy news. When good things are good, that is good. Let's see. My win, I got 7 piercings once on Wednesday, and I was meaning to get done / redone for years now, so yay. Whoa, that's a lot. If they were, how are you feeling? It's a lot of hole punchers. I can't even imagine where they all are either. I can't imagine 7. I guess you can have tons of ear piercings, or nose and labret and all that kind of stuff, or other places. I guess depends upon how adventurous you are. How would you compare BG3 to the older games if you played them? Love the first 2, but it'll be a while before I can get to BG3. I've never played the Baldur's Gate games before this. I just I don't. I will say, okay, Menmath. I will say this. I'll say this about what your kind of question is. I, Tristan, have always had a sort of love-hate relationship with the genre known as the CRPG, the sort of like the sort of isometric click turn-based combat, D&D like game. It's always been like a very big space between the game that like my feelings for wanting to play it and enjoying the actual experience of playing them. Like, I personally, I don't know if I would ever get to make it work. I'm going to wait until like the Steam Workshop stuff sort of comes into play for Baldur's Gate. But my personal experience with the game is still, I don't love the control schemes for like the CRPG, the standard CRPG. So I'm not crazy about isometric click and move type controls. It's very unintuitive for me, and it's just not a thing that I vibe with. But the Baldur's Gate game has gotten me over that in a big way. And I think mostly it wasn't so much that it's bad, it's just that I it's very not what I'm used to playing, and so I just kind of like meh about it. But the Baldur's Gate game has kind of gotten me used to the control schematics and has made me very seriously consider like taking another look at Divinity Original Sin 2, which I enjoyed, but I couldn't get too deep into because the control scheme was just, grinding against my brain. But I might return to it because Baldur's Gate was such a good time that that's like a thing that I have like enjoyed. Or that is the thing that I kind of maybe get now. One of my favorite things that I'm waiting for mods for Baldur's Gate 3 to get into the Steam Workshop is I saw an article about this that you can do this through like Nexus stuff, but when you do Nexus stuff, like, I don't know, the game really doesn't like when you mess with its files in that way. So I'm gonna wait till it's on the Steam Workshop, if it ever gets on the Steam Workshop. But there's a combination of mods that I really want to try that I think would really improve the game for me. And if you could do it in Divinity, I would also be happy, which is it is an improved camera mod and a WASD control mod, and it sort of turns it into a third-person adventure game while you're doing stuff. And I feel like I would like both Baldur's Gate and Divinity Original Sin 2 better as like a third-person sort of WASD control game rather than like, the sort of isometric click and move type thing, which obviously will take some time. But honestly, I'm getting used to it. They're all cartilage except tongue. Oof. Tongue piercing feels like, obviously, this is me. I'm not yucking anybody's yum. So trust me, this all does not come from a place of judgment. This is just my own personal like vibe of it. Tongue piercings feel like they would be really annoying. I imagine that you probably get used to them very fast, but it just would, I feel like I would just go nuts with like the idea that there's like always like this lumpy thing in my mouth and I would always be playing with it. But that's just me. I'm a weirdo in that game, in that way. Apparently Seth Rogen gave the crew as much time as they needed to get it done, so kudos for that. Seth Rogen? For Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I forgot that he was involved with that. That's awesome. As far as piercings go, though, I haven't been super into piercing. The only time I ever considered piercings is I almost once considered the eyebrow barbell when I was like a teenager because they were really popular when I was in high school. And I thought they looked cool, but I have a feeling that piercings wouldn't really work for me. But if I were to get one, I probably would get like, if I were to get one, I'd probably get like a cartilage thing. I feel like that would be a pretty cool, like a couple like 2 kind of close together cartilage piercings would be pretty cool. I think I would enjoy that. But I'm in no rush, obviously. Okay, as you can see, the meth is hitting hard. Sorry, Tristan, quick question. Have I ever been to Canada Land? Have I ever listened to Canada Land? A bit of a different take on Canadian media and politics, but a good one. Yes, I used to be a fairly regular listener to the Canada Land family of podcasts. I liked it when I used to... Like, Canada Land is okay. I think Jesse Brown has... You know, he has okay politics. His investigations were very much needed in a industry that is... for anyone who doesn't know, Canada Land is a podcast that is basically an investigative journalism show that does pieces on Canadian media specifically. And which Canadian media is a very small, very incestuous, and very corrupt industry. And so that enjoys a lot of protection from the federal government in ways that is not great. So that sucks. That sucks a lot. And that's sort of part of the thing that we're doing, or the thing that Canada Land was really good at. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed that show for quite a while. I just kind of just drifted away from it because maybe this is true of other people, but it is definitely true for me. And that is, if you want to be a podcast that has my attention, you have an extremely high bar to clear, because I have the amount of hours that I have to listen to podcasts and the amount of podcasts that exist are very different. And so if I do not absolutely fucking love a podcast, I will very easily drop it and I will never listen to it. I mostly listen to, like, at the moment, I mostly have, like, I have a bunch of, like, podcasts that I listen to episodes, like, occasionally, but I really only have, like, maybe, like, 3 or 4 podcasts that I, like, really keep up with. Let me see. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, 3. 4 if you want, if you, like, 2, 3.5. I don't know. One of them is just that I tend to listen to It's Probably Not Aliens eventually, but that's the podcast that I host, and I obviously listen to it for reasons other than my own entertainment. I kind of listen to it just as, like, quality control and to see how it came out in the end, because I don't get to listen to the final product before it goes live. I just am at the recording, and then I get to see how it came out on the other end, so I tend to do that. But other than that, like, Induction... I think it's called Induction, right? What's it called? Tom Nicholas's podcast, right? I think it's called Induction. Yeah, Induction with Tom Nicholas. I listen to that one fairly regularly. I still listen to Chapo Trap House for some reason. I don't know. The podcast is getting to the point where it's annoying me more than it's entertaining me, and so I'm kind of just... As someone who debunks conspiracy theories semi-professionally, I really am... Their insistence on conspiracy theory bullshit annoys me. But either way. And the third podcast is Radio War Nerd, which I think right now is my absolute favorite podcast. Hands down. Radio War Nerd is probably the best podcast for understanding things going on in the world right now. It sounds like it's a weird name for a podcast, but Radio War Nerd is basically about international geopolitics with a focus on conflicts that are going on. Occasionally they do episodes where they do deep dives into things about history of warfare that I like less, but sometimes they're interesting. But oftentimes what they do is, like, these really good interviews with, like, conflict journalists or with people who are researching various things. They have been doing lots of coverage of everything that's going on in Ukraine right now, but they've done coverage they've covered topics that, like, no other news podcast I really see has done in depth. Like they've done some really great talks into what's going on in Ethiopia with the war in the Tigray region. They've done and also they've talked about the war in Ukraine, but they've talked about it with a knowledge of several people. Like I think both hosts of the podcast, but one of them especially have like done extensive reporting on Russia, and several of them, they've been to Russia several times, and they bring on people who like are like actual experts on Russia and have been for like decades. And that is that's a thing. That's like a really awesome thing. And I like it a lot. And so that's that. So Radio Warner, big suggestion. As far as Candleland goes, the thing that really like pissed me off about Candleland is their best podcast at one point was called Candleland Commons. And I don't know if this show is around anymore, but when it first started, it was really good. It had one of its hosts was Q Anthony, who at the time went by the name Andre Domis, and he's gone on a very interesting arc since he left Candleland Commons. He was sort of like a like left-leaning liberal who worked in the finance sector when he was in Candleland, or he had just like left that and gone into journalism in the Candleland Commons. He's been like he's been on television a bunch of times in debates, and then in like the last like couple years he's turned into like a radical Marxist-Leninist, and like has had some takes, not ones that I always agree with, but has had some very interesting like takes on things, and is a very interesting person to read and follow. And I really liked Candleland and those Candleland Commons in those like early months. But then sometime around 2016 they changed hosts, and they got two new hosts who were very weirdly, like, despite the fact that it was supposed to be a show about Canadian politics, the show got like extremely anti-Bernie Sanders randomly. It was like made by like started like being like very into supporting Clinton and attacking Bernie Sanders, and I was just like, okay, I guess I'm just done with this. But like I don't know if it's here, it might be downstairs, but I have Jesse Brown's book, like the Candleland Guide or whatever thing. I've got that book somewhere, and I saw him. He came to London as part of like his book tour for that book, and I met him, so I was at least a big enough fan for that. All right. I love having something in my mouth all the time that I can play with. Well, good for you. I'm glad that gives you pleasure. I just know that kind of a thing like that would drive me insane. Like when I like, you know, if I have like a canker sore or something in my mouth, it drives me up the wall, and I can't even imagine having like a piece of metal or something like that. It would. But hey, if you like it, go with the gods. All right. Do we have any other wins? We kind of just went right into ad-libbing, but does anyone have any more wins of the stuff that they've been through? They've had in the last week of victories that they can claim from the universe. I haven't seen a chat in a while, so I want to see if people are still watching. Oh. No, you had a few vacation days this week. That was really nice. That is awesome. Good job on you, Tarbox. That is a great... We stand a vacation. Still love you. Thank you, Left of Spectrum. Appreciate it. Okay, my nephew turns 1 on Sunday, which is exciting. Aww. That's always a fun... It's always a fun thing. I am not currently on fire. Awesome, Chemical Tree. Love when people are not on fire. Not everyone can say that. I guess, like, for the second time this year, a significant portion of my country is on fire, so... And we're getting, like, the smoke alarms again, so that's fun. The atmosphere's oxygen is depleting. Is that a... Jesus Christ. It's the opposite of what we're looking for here. I made significant progress in cleaning my parents' house. Ooh. That is awesome, Kevin. If your family is anything like mine, because I don't know if I've mentioned this, but like my mom has issues with like my mom has a hoarding disorder, and now she's retired and they're trying to clean the house, and that can be an arduous process. And if you're dealing with the same thing, not that I think you are, but if you are, that is a huge W, and one that not a lot of people would appreciate unless you lived through it. So, yeah. Nephew turning 1 on Sunday, so cute. Oh man. My son's birthday's in January, and I'm already trying to think of a cool ideas. I helped clean out a family hoarder house. It's an intense thing. It can be a really that was last year, but still, yeah. It's an intense experience. Hoarders have their emotional attachment to their objects is one of those things. And I always have kind of a curiosity about these maybe because of my mom, but I have these curiosities about specific types of psychological disorders, because it's one of those. And I feel like if I ever went into like becoming a therapist, I would find these types of disorders interesting, which is just disorders that, like, mental health disorders that are very hard to empathize with. Which I know sounds like a weird thing to say, but like the handful that I can think of are like hoarding disorders, where but like the more close ones that I was thinking of are like narcissistic personality disorder, or psychopathy, like those kinds of disorders that are, legitimate psychological, mental health issues, but are, because of the nature of them, are very hard to they're very hard to empathize with the person who is suffering from it. And another one, I guess, would be like, is it BPD or probably not BPD? Like what's that one that they always give teenagers who are jerks? Like defiant personality disorder or something like that. You increase your cable row weight from 150 to 155. That is definitely a win. Yeah, make them gains. It's one of the best parts about weightlifting is that you can like eke out a little win every so often, and it's like measured in numbers. Also, Meow Nan, like, I am very jealous as somebody who wants very much to go to the gym, but does not have the time to go to the gym and has to work out in my office. Like, right over there is a yoga mat and some dumbbells, because that's the only way that I can actually get some exercise in. But I want so bad to be able to go to the gym. It's just that when you have a toddler, it turns out that you can't really go do things ever. I realize how depressive this audience is. Reality is hard, maybe? Yeah, well, I think that... I will say, I think that there is... this is the reason I like to talk about the W's, is because I think that there is an over-doomerism in especially like left-wing communities. And I think that doomerism is as dangerous and as counter-revolutionary as like denying the problems of the world. Like there's now like a growing... an example, I should say, is that there's like this growing movement of climate change doomers who... are claiming like that, like depending upon how intense you go, because I've seen different levels of intensity on this, but people have gone to the extent of like, oh, like there's no turning back. The Earth is on a runaway spiral that's going to result in like human extinction, and that like, there is no stopping it. There's no like any of these things. And like that is as counterproductive as the people who deny that climate change is real, because there's functionally, when it comes to like what we can actually do about things, no difference between climate change isn't real, so let's not do anything about it, or we are doomed, so let's not do anything about it. And that and also like, and a lot of like the left-wing project is one of, it's utopian. It's striving for a better world than the one that it can be in. In many ways, it's supposed to be the most optimistic of all ideologies, because it's the only one that dares to imagine that the world can actually be better than it is. And that, and to embrace the sort of like fatalism is actually dangerous, and it's counter-revolutionary. It's going to, it's, if anything, it's going to be the liberal state putting you down and stopping you from the critical, imaginative work that we need to build a better tomorrow. So I like to celebrate wins because we as a community get them every day. That's why I still edit Positive Leftist News every month. It's important. And it's a bigger deal. And I was definitely moved when I had a when I had a kid, and I had so much of my audience like get mad at me for having a child, which I thought was just absolutely insane. But as the time has moved on, I've realized that it's because of this doomerism based like thinking, and not realizing that, having a child in this world it's a radical choice. It is a choice that you are not choosing to check out of this planet, and you are choosing to say, no, I have a stake in the future being better. I have something to fight for. I know somebody who is very likely going to be alive in the year 2100, so my efforts in life should be focused on making sure that 2100 is a good place to be. Whew. Oh boy. Vyvanse is going to make streaming a lot easier. I can just keep talking. Let's see. Operational Defiance. Defiant personality disorder sounds like it was made up by the principal from the Breakfast Club. Yeah, for real. Yeah, no, you're blessed with a basement. I actually do have a basement too. It's just that my basement is, my house is like 100 years old, right? So my basement is the kind of basement that I can't actually stand up in. Like, if I stand up completely straight, I will hit my head on the ceiling of my basement. It's too short. We've talked in the past about like trying to turn my part of the basement into a studio, but it's just like, it's not going to happen. So, because like my head interfacing with the ceiling is just, I would not be able to stand up straight. And it's absolutely wild. I wish that like I could, and unfortunately, like I would love to finish the basement of my house, but it would be, can you imagine how expensive it would be to like basically have to, like dig up the concrete foundation of the house and dig like an extra foot of soil down so that it could be tall enough to be like a real room. Post my height, I'm like roughly, I have a driver's license. I'm like depending upon how how generous the person what's it called, like I'm about 6 feet tall, but sometimes if the person measuring my height is being generous, it's 6'1". So I'm like somewhere in that area. That's sort of the, like, that's about it, really. Like, I honestly, like, I'll probably end up being like shorter as I get older, right? Because that happens, and I'll probably get down to like 4'11", 4'10", or something, or 5'10", 4'11". Oh boy, but yeah. I just watched the new Sophie from Mars video. The topic is pretty based. Yeah, it's called The World's Not Ending. I want to watch that one too. I'm excited to check that one out, but and I will get to it at some point. I just need like those like 2-hour plus YouTube videos are really tough for me to make the time for. So I gotta like figure out where it's gonna fit, especially right now because I am so hyper focused on Baldur's Gate that I have like kind of neglected all of my other media intake at the moment. I have 3 kids myself. I always thought that if we don't raise the next generation, guess who will? Yeah, there is that. Social media amplifies doomerism and loneliness. Go out and touch grass, folks. Yeah. I just got a W. Okay. I celebrated 14 years of marriage yesterday. Fuck yeah. We love a good marriage. And I'm getting off work early today to play mini golf with the most wonderful partner in the world. Oh my god, that's adorable. Master Matt, you are precious. I hope you have an amazing anniversary. And we should all be so lucky to get to 14 years. That's an amazing thing. I still have like another. It'll be math. It'll be 8 years next year, so I still got a long ways to go. My family is pretty prone and susceptible to hoarding and addictive behavior, and the people around you and what happens in life make it worse or better. Yeah. I've definitely gotten better when I moved out. And like, because like hoarding can pass on to your family. And I, as a result, have kind of become the opposite. I throw out things all the time to the point where my mom's like no longer, like she's like no longer bequeathing anything in her, anything that's not like, you know, like assets and financial stuff. She's like none of her like personal objects she's like bequeathing to me anymore because she's afraid that I'm going to throw them out. The increase in property tax, I'm assuming Ontario is a bit more expensive than Western Canada. Oh, fuck yes. I live in a small house. Like, okay, I live in a, like, medium, like a 2-bed or 3-bedroom house, I guess. Pay more than, like, a lot of times if you have, like, I don't know, mortgage is pretty intense. But also, property taxes, I don't know, it's not super expensive. It's money. It's real money. But the mortgage is like, you know, makes me not even think about it. I haven't seen it. No, the video is 2+ hours long, and I have on average about 30 minutes of free time a day. So I have to like dedicate like several days to watching Sophie from Mars's video. We'll see. It has 3 parts. It's easy to chop up that way. Yeah, I'll get to it. I at the moment right now is that this week I'm kind of behind on my next video. Because of this volunteering thing that basically like devoured my entire week, because the person who's running this volunteer project has no idea how long things take, and he was just like, I need it by Friday, and I'm like, fuck. Like, so I guess like I'm like I'm using very precious step back time to put together this volunteer work video that I'm doing. Luckily, I've actually found some really useful. This is going to be... I shouldn't say it because it's going to get me in trouble. Because my last video showed people are mad at Tristan about stuff. But I have found some very useful tools using Code Interpreter in ChatGPT to help me speed up the process of the kind of project I'm working on. So, God. Everybody who says that ChatGPT is just glorified autocomplete have never fucked around with the Code Interpreter. Holy shit. That thing is insane. Yeah. Also, a lot of the times the people who say that ChatGPT has low quality is because they're using the free model, and the free model is meh, but the paid model is kind of insane. Using a code interpreter code. Using a code interpreter. Why is this thing in the way? That sentimental impulse. Okay, here we go. Oh, yeah. I'm getting better at throwing things out myself, but I've gotten that twinge for specific objects, that sentimental impulse. Yeah. Yeah, it's a thing like that you're obviously taught when you're young, and then like you gotta throw it. Like like my mom's whole family are dead now. Like her parents are both dead and her brother is dead. And so my mom has sort of just taken all of their stuff and in many ways like all of their like sort of family heirlooms and like refuses to do anything to get rid of them. Like she has literally suitcases full of like old photographs, many of them of people that she doesn't even know, but doesn't want to get rid of them because that's history, you know? And it's just like, ugh. The idea of like physical photographs, Jesus Christ, I don't want that. Work with some people who have hoarding issues, and one thing I might say, if your hallways and doorways aren't blocked, you are doing okay. Stay safe out there. Practice harm reduction wherever you can. Yeah. The main problem with a lot, because like the main problem with a lot of hoarding issues is that their houses become fire hazards because either they can't get out or there's just a lot of flammable material that is in like random places so that a house can go up very fast. It's why like it's considered like a pretty big like social issue type thing. It belongs in a museum. Yeah, for like what, the museum of like our family? Like no one would care about that. Maybe it belongs like, you know, digitized on some sort of like Wix website to sit there for all eternity and have nobody look at it, but there are so many fucking photographs, you know? I have difficulties throwing things out, so I resort to what I call faux minimalism. Just put them in furniture that doubles as containers. No one will be the wiser. Haha. Yeah, my hoarding problem is just the fact that I'm too lazy to like. So there's two types of problems that I have, which is one, we have a lot of like random shit from like the fact that we moved a bunch. Like the things that we tend to have a lot of is we have a lot of like random kitchen utensils because our kitchen cupboard space is not great. So we have a lot of like kitchen appliances that, you know, like the kind of things you only use like once in a blue moon. Like we have like you know, like an old coffee machine that we don't use anymore because we have a what's it called, the potty thing or the French press that we use for our coffee. So we have like an old drip one in case like, you know, we need to make like 6 cups of coffee in like, you know, a short amount of time with like friends or something. But we also have, but also the other problem is that we have a bunch of baby shit because as anybody who's had children knows, you end up with a whole bunch of free shit when you have a kid because everyone pawns off all the stuff from their kids onto you. And then you get a bunch of stuff that they only use for like maybe like a few months, you know, right? And then you have it sit in your basement until somebody else has a kid and you can pawn it all off on them. So, you know, and because so few millennials are having kids, anytime somebody has one, like you get multiple copies of everything because like you're the only person that like several people know that are having kids, so they pawn off all of their kid shit onto you. So we have like you know those like things that babies lie on that are just sort of like a little rocker thing? We have like 3 of those and we used one and he's too big for them now. Or like, you know, those like standing things with like all the toys and stuff. Like we have like 2 or 3 of those. We don't need, or the walking toy that also like our kid walks now. He doesn't need to play with them anymore. Like there's so many of those kinds of things that we don't have them. Or shoes or just clothes. They grow so fast that you like will buy like for example, somebody gave me like clothes, like they gave us a bunch of clothes, but it was like a kid that was obviously born at a different time of year. So we had a bunch of like newborn clothes that were like summer clothes when like our kid was born in fucking January. So like he was born in the middle of the winter. So by the time it got to the summer, he was too big to wear the clothes. They never got used. We've got tons of shit like that. And then we also get a bunch of clothes that that have to sit around because he's not big enough for them yet. So, you know, we've got stuff for like when he's like 2 and 3 and 4. But tool library for baby stuff. Yeah, there is a great like, you know, kind of like anti-consumer part of it, which is the fact that whenever somebody has a kid, you just drop off a bunch of stuff and everybody kind of comes together to give you stuff. That is great because the urge for consumerism there is strong, right? Got a month-old grandson who lives with me. I share your pain. Yeah. Dude, I have so much baby stuff myself. Yeah. So I can't wait. Unfortunately, like, I literally don't have any friends that I know of. Like, every single friend I have, even the ones that are, like, in couples and married and stuff like that, none of them plan on having children. None of them. I have no... we have one couple friend who have a kid, and the reason that we are friends is because when we were at, like, a party and she was pregnant, and we were like, hey, we also have one of those. Let's be friends. That kind of a thing. But, like, no, all of my friends don't want kids. It's so I don't know who we're going to pawn it off to. My sister-in-law is having another kid, but we would have to get all that shit down to the United States, right? So, oh yeah, and the other thing too is that my parents gave me a whole bunch of books from my childhood, which I was happy to have because I think my parents were part of some like book of the month club, and it has like a bunch of these like nice like kind of hardcover kids books. But as my wife's finding out is that there's a lot, they're old, and so like a lot of them are either stained from childhood or they have problematic things in them that we kind of have to get rid of. For sale, baby shoes never worn, but just because the kid's feet grew too fast. Yeah, I think so. One or two kids is okay, but more is kind of selfish. It seems like the world is less populated. We would sustain a comparable quality of life while requiring less resources and polluting less. That is a right-wing myth. You should watch my video on overpopulation that I made in 2021 because the sort of claim that the reason why we have the problems in the world is because there's too many people is actually a myth. And that there's sort of like there's a couple things you could talk about, which is one, that it's not people using resources that are the problem. Like the fastest growing and most populated parts of the world are made up of people who have the least contribution on climate change. Like the fact that like there are people in India who are having 8, 9, 10 kids doesn't move the needle on our resource issues as much as the fact that I, as one person, probably use more resources than that entire family living in the West. And also that there is a very natural process that seems to happen that when countries get more wealthy and more educated and have a higher standard of living, the amount of kids they have seems to go down to balance that out. And actually, on like the sort of longue durée of the next few decades, it's pretty much expected that our population is going to even out at around 9 billion people, which is a very reasonable amount for us to manage. And then it's going to start trending down. Basically, there, a lot of the things, like a lot of the fast-growing populations right now are in India and West Africa. India is still a country that has a lot of industrialization to go through. As they become a more modernized country and as their population gets more educated, they're going to start having less and less children. It's just like kind of a natural part of how it seems that the process of industrialization works. And West Africa, which is sort of the last part of the world to really come online in a big way, is having a big population boom right now. But by the end of the 21st century is expected to also level out and start going down. And so, yeah, I think that it's just like sort of it's just like a fact of how demographics work. Because if you think about it, as you move into a more urbanized, educated population, kids become less of a asset and more of a liability. Like if you live on a farm and, one in like a quarter of your kids die, then having as many kids as you can is good because they're free labor and they're, the thing. And also in a place without a social safety net, they are your retirement plan, really. But with in a sort of society where your kid has to go to daycare, has to go to school, and has to will not probably become financially independent until they're in their 20s, if that. Every kid is essentially like a really expensive resource. Like a lot of the reason why my friends aren't having kids is because they don't have the money for it. So that's just like a fact. And that's just how life changes as like societies change. And what about its impact on other life on Earth? The main thing, though, is that we could sustain a population of 9 billion people on this planet and use fewer resources than we're using now. That's the problem. That is the problem is not that there are too many people. The problem is that we are overproducing so much shit because of the need to exponentially keep growing the economy. This is the sort of why I think degrowth is or the anti-degrowth people are assholes. Because it's mostly like Peter Coffin and like, you know, the commie Nazis like Caleb Maupin and stuff. But it's like it's a situation where the amount of resources per people can go down by quite a bit, and there are ways that it's happening. Like if you look at like a sort of like carbon use, like carbon dioxide produced per person over the last like maybe 40-50 years, it peaked a few years ago, and it's starting to go down. And the like some of the things that we do like are extremely carnivorous diets with factory-based farming is a huge and the way that we do agriculture is a huge waste of land and resources that could be given over to, you know, the other species we share the world with. And I do think that in the future we could very sustainably through like developing technologies, but also through like changing the way that we incentivize the production and maintenance of resources, change things. Like, for example, we could, like, the population that we could support would be humongous if we all decided to live in cities, because the amount of resources used per person if you live in an urban area is way lower, and even more if you live in like high density housing. Like, the amount of energy per person used in an apartment building is way lower than people who live in like the country who have like a gas car and houses and stuff, or who drive cars and such. Like, there's a lot of ways that we could, that the like a lot of the ways that we could keep our, even if we wanted to keep our standard of living and reduce the amount of resources we use, especially because we also overproduce stuff and waste a lot of it. Like, I think we almost produce like 150% of the commodities that we need, and 50% is just waste. It's just thrown immediately in the trash. That, if we could, like, that is a huge, like, already we could, at current resource extraction, using the same methods we use now, support a population of, let me just do the napkin math here, 8 times 1.5. We are making enough stuff for a population of a world of 12 billion people, more than we are expected to get, and we are just losing a lot of it to waste. So we could just take care of that. Things like changing our energy grid so it's not carbon intensive, and even so it's like modular and not taking up a lot of space. Things like small nuclear reactors, things like wave power, all sorts of different, you know, changing our energy grid and all that kind of stuff would be huge to changing the way that we like there are lots of ways that are way more effective at curtailing our use of natural resources and you know, destroying habitats that are way more effective than like forcing people to not have children. or even like just not having kids. Whew. This meth's hitting real hard, man. I think the biggest change in our population growth slows down. We are seeing elderly people taking up a larger part of the population. This is true. This is a fact of the fact that like people are having less kids, but also the fact that people are living longer. As we are getting better biomedical technology, people are going to live older and be productive older, which is also a thing we're going to have to learn, because we have this is going to sound super evil, but we have a social security net that is based on retiring at an age that was set a long time ago, and now like retirees are living like 30 years sometimes after their retirement, where they are taking out of a system that they paid into, but there's not enough people paying into it to sort of cover for that. which means that we would probably need to like maybe rethink the way that our system works. Not that I want to raise the retirement age or anything, but I think that there's like, obviously that's like the math needs to balance out somehow, and I don't really know the proper way to do that, but there's lots of ways you could go about it. They don't have money for their current priorities and properly prioritizing the kids. That is also true. Like, I also understand having enough money for kids, but just not wanting to have that be part of your life. That's, choosing to not have kids is a very like rational, legitimate choice. It takes a very specific type of personality to, not specific, but like, because like a lot of people have kids, but like it takes it changes the way that you basically approach your entire life. It's not something that you should do just because you feel like you have to. It should definitely be a choice, and it is a perfectly reasonable choice to just not do that too. But it also, I would say that in an ideal world, maybe we like. I like, that's fine. Like, I don't give any shit to people who choose not to have children. That's perfectly fine. Like, as I said, most of the people in my life have chosen that they do not wish to have children, and that's cool with me. I really would like it if people would stop fucking bitching about people who have kids and stop like, like I hate with a burning passion words like crotch goblins and like the child-free subreddit and things like that. I fucking hate those people. Like, yes, we have small people in our lives. They are children. Children can be loud, they can be messy, they can be annoying. That is just a fact of them. But they are also human beings. They deserve recognition, and they should not be treated like there's some sort of imposition on society. They are people. Okay. Why is having 9 billion people good or necessary? Can't we have a population of 1 billion, use 1/9 the resources, and have a 1/9 of environmental impact? Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing on that. How do you do that? What is the way? People, it seems like, if left to their own devices, will have children. That is just a fact of nature. So, are you planning on mass sterilization campaigns? Are you planning on infanticide? Are you planning on population culling? What policy do you propose to get the population to go down that drastically? Because the only time we've seen population drops of that magnitude are massive natural disasters, genocides, and horrific diseases. None of which I would like to impose on society in any meaningful way. And furthermore, like, there is also the network effect. The fact is that because we have 8 billion people on the planet, and we're probably going to cap out at 9 billion, that is also 9 billion different minds, different combinations, different life experiences, different future scientists, engineers, authors, writers, musicians, actors, nice people who throw an extra dumpling in your order, people who through the combined effect would be greater than the sum of their parts. The network effect of people, more people existing, will improve life for human beings in multiple different ways. And I think the fact that we have had so much super like a lot of like scientific progress, philosophical progress, social progress, making a more just society come from the fact that we have more people who are able to articulate and speak and think and work and such. You can personally choose to drive your resource run, and then you can afford a kid, or you cannot have kids and not make sacrifices. Okay. Okay. I will say, when I realized just how much waste comes from massive corporations, it made it a lot. Yeah. I mean, shit. The future I feel like there's a decent enough future where, like, what's it called? Like, the thing is, like one of the major uses of land and resources we have is the way that we produce food. And the way that we produce food hasn't gone through a major change in, like, 70 years. We are, like, with the, like, sort of, with the sort of development of things like cellular agriculture, and which is sort of like, I guess the more colloquial term is lab-grown meat, which is sort of a grotesque way to talk about it, but cellular agriculture as well as vertical farms, which are farms that are indoors and are way more, like, energy and resource efficient than your typical farm, are there are developing technologies that will be huge changes to the way that we do things. Remember when children used to be a nice thing to have around? It used to be thought it was a nice thing. Yeah, like, in some ways I get it. Like in some ways, like, yeah, kids are loud, and if you're not used to them being around, you know, like, they can be quite a disturbance. But also, like, kids are people, and also their parents are people, and it seems that, like, if you're like your average child-free Reddit poster, that parents should either not exist, or children should not exist, or if they do, they should be segregated from society and kept from doing anything and participating in anything. They should just be kept locked away in their house, never allowed to participate in society ever, which is fucked up, I think. All right. What is your plan for getting there? Because I will volunteer that people rushing this line of reasoning, reasoning to the front of the line of 8 billion. In many ways, if you want to find a way to sustainably, like, get to the population to sustainable levels and even have it start decreasing and have our resource improvement, the best way to change things on that front is to give people education and higher living standards. That has been shown to be, and of course, comprehensive contraception and sex education. Those have been the things that have improved, like, family planning and all those kinds of things, and have led to sort of more sustainable population growth. Like, that is the kind of stuff that causes the populations to sort of level out and then decline as populations get more sort of, you know, industrialized and such. So if you really want to if you really think that, you know, if you have this sort of Malthusian idea that that the way the world works, start investing in those things. Did you miss wins yet? ZMF, there is always time for wins. If you have a new win, please give it up. Give it up for wins. Is there a difference in philosophy between degrowth and sustainability? Degrowth, as far as I understand it, is just the idea that maybe we need to... Like, sustainability is, yeah, just making things that are able to be sustained, but degrowth is the idea of moving away from the concept that the economy needs to always be growing, and that things need to always be, like, things should always be working to be bigger and bigger all the time. Instead, moving towards something that is more about, you know, like having a sustainable situation and improving, like, and maybe not so much having a like get the human condition to a good place and then focus on keeping it good rather than, like, can it always get better? Can we make things better forever? But and I think that there's some real value to, like, how can we get more with less rather than how can we get more with more? Always more. How can we live a life where we don't use as much resources? Or how can we, like, improve society without having to just constantly be building bigger and bigger things? Maybe that's just my, like, not having a strong understanding of degrowth, but that is the sort of mentality that I go with. And I think that there is, while it's, like, you know, not something that I'm entirely like, you know, like a zealot for, it is something that I understand and I sympathize with, and I think has good policies behind it and good ideas behind it, and that there are probably definitely some things we should try with it. Whew. All right. Have some small wins. Wins in progress, if you will. I'm currently writing a pair of songs that are ultimately about class struggle and what to do about it. Nice. Gotta love. You're adding music to the world. That is always a good thing. My understanding is that vertical farms were very electricity intensive. Any idea if that's improved? I'm asking a random question about something you don't specialize in, so no clue is fine. As far as I know, they are definitely more electricity intensive than, like, say, a farm, but they are way less water intensive. And I feel like we are hitting a point in the not too distant future where our capacity to produce energy is going to greatly outpace our capacity to produce fresh water. And furthermore, like, the amount of energy that it uses, they have found ways to improve the energy usage in a lot of ways because, for example, they use LEDs instead of, like, your typical, obviously the sun is a more efficient means, but if you think about it, converting sunlight into electricity that then gets turned into a pretty efficient LED that even only emits light at the wavelengths that chlorophyll is specifically, like, good at absorbing. Like, if you ever noticed that in these, like, vertical farm situations that there's, like, this, like, everything is purple and it's actually kind of dark, and it's because you don't actually need to give as much light as the sun to grow plants because they really only absorb from certain light frequencies, and if you just give them that light frequency, you don't have to use that much energy to give them the sunlight that they need in order to do photosynthesis. The main, like, and for, like, some plants, vertical farming is already, like, super fucking easy to do. Like, for, like cabbage and lettuce and stuff like that shit's, like, fucking easy. More it comes to, like, stuff that, like orchard plants, like, almonds and fruit and stuff like that, and things like corn and everything like that have more difficulties. But it's a problem that a lot of people are working on, and a lot of people with a lot of resources are working on, so I definitely could see, like, some progress coming on that front. It's I follow a bunch of, like, Google alerts, and I will say that, like, the vertical farm industry is one that, like, a lot of people are interested in, and it's one of those things that could be a massive game changer for the near-term future. That's why I kind of keep my eyes on it, because it's a thing that a lot of, investors are interested in. Same with solid-state batteries, same with delivery drones, same with, like, sort of like what's the other technology, like cellular agriculture, like cultivated meat and stuff like that. Like, all that stuff is, like, those are the things that are going to really change things in our current paradigm. So I'm always keeping my eye on them. Obviously, relying on technology as a savior is bad, but also it doesn't hurt to find better ways and more efficient ways and less resource intensive ways to do the same things that we're doing now, because it's a much easier sell to people to say, hey, you can have the same quality of life that you have now. You don't have to change your habits, but things are going to be better and more efficient. That is a way better way to do things than, say, yelling at everybody to stop eating hamburgers because cows cause climate change. Not saying that, this is not me shitting on vegans, but I do think that, like, if your goal is to move to a sustainable food system, getting everybody to stop eating animal protein is just, it's a non-starter. It's just not going to be a thing. There's no comprehensive plan to get to that tipping point. Even though it's getting better, there's a whole, people in, extremely developed countries are starting to reduce their meat consumption, while people in, developing countries, like in China and such, are drastically increasing their their consumption, and things are getting kind of out of hand. But there is a way forward. No doomerism. Maybe I should make, a little picture on the screen somewhere that's like no doomerism, anti-doomer action type thing. All right. My understanding is that, yeah, okay. I think it's overcorrection to know past many people would have kids on a whim and then abuse them for existing. Just like the issue isn't people having kids, it's child abuse. Yeah. We've definitely seen a decline in what form of parenting and a decrease in people who treat their children with autonomy. Let's see. Yeah, let's ease off on left of spectrum. Don't go too hard. There's disagreements, but like the disagreements are not coming from a place of cruelty. It's just that there's not really like I disagree, but I also don't think that you're being malicious there. But I do think that left of spectrum. I think your assumptions about the way that resource consumption work and population numbers work is based on outdated ideas about how population works that have been used to justify basically like, taking away people's social safety net and sterilizing and killing large groups of people. And that's we can do better. That's all I'll say. We can do better. We don't need to tell people whether or not they're allowed to have children or whether or not they want to have families and still have things get better. Would the world be would it be easier definitely to manage the resources of the planet if we had like 1 billion people? That is objectively true. Yes. Does that mean is there a way to get to there that does not involve us essentially doing either draconian or horrific measures to people that since that seems to be our entire history of us trying to control population size has always resulted in horrors beyond recognition? That is also true. More people adopting kids would help. Yes. That's why, like, what's it called? If I was ever in a position where we were thinking about having a second kid, like if we were in a situation like, wow, we have so much free time and money, let's have another one of those. We would we'd have to adopt because, but yeah, we would go through that. And also, before we had our kid, we actually went through the entire process to become foster parents. But we just didn't do the last little bit of actually entering the foster kid program. So, we have all the training and everything like that. So we could, at some point, get into that if we wanted to. Your kid has been in speech therapy for 2 years with daily intentional homework, and I finally understood every word of one of his sentences. That is so cute. That's so awesome. Congratulations on your kid overcoming that. That is so awesome. As someone whose kid right now is just starting to get words, and there's some concern that he might be a little bit behind on his vocabulary, it's awesome to see victories like that. We already had. I have one of the frustrating things about my son. I love him so much, but one of the things is that when it comes to like the whole idea that like all the experts have on milestones, is that he always takes his time to get to all of the things he's supposed to get to. He gets to everything late, but he gets to it eventually. But he gets to it eventually to the point where like for example, he was having a lot of issues eating solid food. We were getting to the point where he was like he really should be just eating solid food at this point, but he was still on formula and it was not great. But like literally we had to like book time with an occupational therapist, and we took him to the occupational therapist, and almost right after the preliminary meeting where they just went to go and see how he ate and like what his food was like almost right after that he figured out eating, and now he eats like normal. And I was just like, God damn it. Okay, fine. And now we're like, when he was like behind on speech, and like we're currently in the sort of queue to see a speech therapist, just because the wait list is like 6 months long, and so they were like, hey, like just put on the list, and hey, if he catches up, then we can just take him off. But he's now starting to get words together now, and it's like he's gonna be speaking on track right when he goes to see that speech therapist. I can just tell. But yeah. I can't show you guys anything. Can't you slowly depopulate over 3 centuries, have constitutional rights to as many children as you want, but disincentivize 2 or more with economic and tax levers? You could do that, or you could just do what we're doing now, which is, like, as I kind of mentioned, the way to have a more sustainable population is just give people, like, education, family planning, contraception, those kinds of things, and like sex education, and sort of more autonomy for women, especially like financial and, like, professional autonomy for women. And it turns out that those things are very effective at curtailing population growth. And as I mentioned, the population of the Earth is set to hit 9 billion, and then it's going to start going down. We don't know what happens after that because, negative population growth for the planet is not something we've experienced ever, I think. And so where that goes after that, but, like, if you want, like, one of the biggest things you could do to accelerate the path to, 1 billion humans is increase quality of life for everybody, give women more rights, give more education, give more sex education, give access to contraception and family planning, and it'll take care of itself. You don't really need to, like, have the soft one-child policy or something like that, I was nonverbal for longer than I should have. The moment I got it, I wouldn't shut up. I've heard that for a lot of people. The other thing that might also be slowing down his language growth is that I'm trying to give him some, like, we're not doing very well at it, but we are trying to keep a what's it called? A bilingual house. And so sometimes we use multiple words for the same things, and, Did the population of Earth continue to grow during times like the Black Plague? I don't think so. I think that those are one of the times where the population did decrease. That was also one of the most devastating, and also the other time would be during the very, very sanitized depeopling of the Americas, which was when old world diseases wiped out like 90% of the population of North and South America. That caused, like, a massive, like, a decrease of like 1/5 of the human population or something insane like that. But, like, also might have caused the rewilding of North America, which led to a big cold snap in history that's called, like, the mini ice age. Hello, Ollie. Welcome to the stream. There's definitely dips. Like, for example, I think there was even I think the population of the Earth even went down in 2020. I think I've seen that somewhere. At least in a lot of countries. There are several countries where the population went down in 2020 because of COVID. But also that could just be in a lot of countries where, like, the population has been evening out or going down. Like, I live in Canada. Canada has been in a place of what's it called? Natural, like, population decline for years. The only reason why Canada's population has increased by, like, I think about 3 or 4 million people in the last decade is because of immigration. Like, Canada is a country where, like, I think, like, almost like a quarter of the country is first generation or less. And in some places like Toronto, it's over 50% first generation or less. And the places where population are growing, where like a lot of our population growth is happening, is in places where there's not, like, the people on average don't actually contribute a whole lot to our resource use. Like, when we talk about, like, population growth right now, you have to realize that, like, population growth in in all of Europe and all of, like, the United States and Canada is, if you want to go by, like, the people living there, like, births happening in those countries, they're going down, and they have been for ages. There's more people dying in those countries than being born in those countries, but those countries are having their population supplanted or supported by immigration. The place where the population is actually growing are in developing countries where the amount of resource use per person is actually really low. Like, India is a place where there's still a fair amount of population growth happening. Places like Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, Sierra Leone, Liberia, those kinds of places are having huge population growths right now. And that like a lot of the increase of the human population is happening in those places. While like, you know, there's every year there are fewer and fewer like, you know, European, like, you know, like white Italians. There are fewer and fewer white Canadians. There are fewer and fewer white Americans. That's just, you know, because people are having, we're not having children at replacement levels. But it doesn't matter because like population's growing in different places. And that's not a bad thing. That's just like a fact of how population growth is going right now. And so, yeah. Man, I feel really good. I've said this several times during the stream, but like this meth is good, man. Vyvanse is good for streaming. Since the only reliable ways to lower population is access to contraceptive, sex education, women having full reproductive rights, should we not anyway do that anyway, regardless of population? Yeah, it turns out the best way to have like a good, like reasonable population growth is just making people's lives better. So maybe we should do that. Fewer people having children, sure, but not always all white. Sure, if you can't, meaning. LOL, ADHD meds go burr. Yeah. This thing is like, I'm still like fairly new to it. This is like my third day taking Vyvanse. So I'm still like, I think my body's still like not used to it. So I'm like hyper good. I'm so focused. I'm so in the zone. I feel like this stream is better than average because of it. So I feel like maybe you guys are getting a better show as a result, but who knows? But yeah, ADHD meds go burr for sure. I might steal that. I might tweet that out later. Yeah. We had a pretty deep conversation too. Yeah. I think that in many ways, like, to sort of reverse and sort of reframe the entire thing. I understand people having a Malthusian argument. It is a very natural way to see the problem of resource overuse. It is, it's the easiest first option to go with, and there are a lot of people who over the years have been touting that as the problem. People have been talking about it people have been talking about overpopulation since the time of Rome. But I will say that it's one of those things that once you delve into the problem, like once you dig into it, as I did for the video that I made, you start to find that a lot of its arguments don't really stand up to evidence. And if you do a real deep dive and look at the real problems, you start to see that it has more to do with the way that our economy functions rather than like the issue of like people in Africa and India having children. And then when you really understand the issue and you understand how things are working and how everything's going, you realize that if you look at the whole problem in 3 dimensions, you realize that like complaining about overpopulation in a way turns into you complaining that people in Nigeria and India are having too many kids. And that's like it doesn't like that. That's not good. I don't really want to tell anybody in Nigeria or India what to do and how many kids to have. Because like, if you wanted to disincentivize, say, having more than 2 children, well, most people in like Canada and the US don't have more than 2 children. Most people have 1 or 2. Like I think like the current like average I think is like 1.5 kids per person, or 1.5 kids per 2 people are being made like right now or something. I don't know. Let's see, what's the replacement? The replacement rate in Canada is 2.1 births per woman. So that is very short of the population replacement level, because you have to also factor that not everybody lives to adulthood. Not everybody who has kids has kids. But yeah, 2.1 births per woman is the average in Canada. And a positive replacement rate is that's well below, it's below a population rate. It's a low fertility country. Yeah, Canada's fertility rate in the last 3 years has been a growth rate of negative 0.5% of the population. So it's already happening. The other thing, too, is that as I started Vyvanse, I also got taken off Wellbutrin, because Wellbutrin, I think, is like a depression and anxiety medication that I was put on because it has an off-label use for ADHD, and even though I don't have depression, I don't have depression. Most of my anxiety, I think, is rooted in the fact that I just can't get shit done. So I'm kind of like, I've kind of had the, it's only been a few days off of Wellbutrin, but I've already had like the sort of like emotional compression stuff kind of come off. And so like, I'm feeling a lot better too. And on top of that, so my mood is a lot better. And on top of that, I have way more energy and I'm way more focused. I'm actually able to do the things that I want to do instead of like, I think like I was talking to Matt Mildred, on Wednesday about it during D&D. And the way that he described it was like, hey, like, yeah, Vyvanse, like, being on Vyvanse is like, when you want to, it's weird. When you want to do something, you just do it. You don't, like, not do it and feel bad about not doing it. You just go and do the thing. And, like, I didn't even know people could do that. Am I feeling more things? Maybe... I'm feeling more positive. Like, I know that if it had been a few days ago and I was still like on the same medical regimen that I was on Wednesday, I definitely would be very, very anxious right now, because I've lost several days to this. Like, I got involved with this volunteer project, and it's a really good volunteer project, but every single time I've tried to estimate how much time it's going to take out of my life, it has been like double, triple, quadruple that. So like what I thought was going to be like maybe like a 1-day project has turned into like what I thought was going to be like a couple hours last month turned into basically losing 3 days of work. Actually 4 if you really think about it. Then like my editing like process for it, I thought was going to be maybe like a day of work, and it's turned out to be like the entire week. I'm trying to get my next video done, and I want to have my next video ready to go in 11 days. I have, I'm still researching this video, so I haven't even started writing the script yet. If I was a different Tristan a few days ago, this would be driving me fucking insane, but it's not. I feel good. I feel optimistic that I will be able to get it to work. I might have to pull some extra shifts. Work a few weekends, work a few nights, but I think I can do it. I feel good about that. And with the fact that I have basically done like 3 or 4 days worth of work every single day since I started taking Vyvanse, I feel like I will get through it. I will persevere. I think you mentioned a kind of time blindness on the podcast. That is true. I definitely never have an accurate idea about how long things are going to take. And it sometimes, and that's also sometimes a source of anxiety, because I will very much be like, and it also pisses off my wife too, because I'll be like, I have this much work to do. This is going to take me like 12 hours. I'm going to have to work through the night. I'm going to have to pull an all-nighter. My life is ruined. Everything is going to be terrible. I'm full of anxiety right now. And then I'll find out that I finished like in like an hour. And I'll be like, fuck, well, okay. Or something that I'm like, oh, this will take a day, and then it'll take like 4 days. I'm like, fuck, okay. So hopefully that will be better. I do feel like one of the things about my Vyvanse days have been like, wow, I didn't realize how many hours I had in the day, which is not a thing I usually am used to saying. And plus, also, like, bonus is that this medication as a side effect completely, like, it's a huge appetite suppressant too. Like, I haven't eaten lunch. I don't even feel hungry. I'll probably be eating lunch after this because, you know, Kelly's gonna want to eat. But like, no snacking. Drinking a fuckload of water though, gotta say. It's been binging at work, and you and Scott talking about that made me do the "it's me" LOL. Yeah. That is true. There's been a lot of like, oops all ADHD editions of It's Probably Not Aliens that have been very chaotic that I have enjoyed. I will say because like there's this whole thing where like is my new medication a quick release or a slow release? I think it's too low of a dosage to be. I think it is slow release. It's just straight up Vyvanse, like the brand Vyvanse. I don't know if it's slow release or fast release, but it's a very small dosage. Like I think I'm only on like 30 milligrams or something like that. Like nothing. So we'll see. Is time blindness a common issue? I've never heard the term, but how Tristan described it fits bang on. Yeah, it's a common symptom of ADHD. Time blindness is a symptom of I mean, it's a thing everybody can experience. But people who have ADHD definitely have like one of their problems is that their internal clock is bad and they're bad at estimating time and stuff like that. And also that because like if you think about like the sort of subjective experience of time, like when you are understimulated, time seems to drag on forever because like, you know, if you're bored, the clock seems to move at like negative speed. But if you're like focused on something, the time seems to like melt away like it's nothing. Because ADHD people have experienced both like the horrors of like the depths of the worst of boredom you can imagine. That's what I'm learning as like now experiencing Vyvanse and seeing what like it's like to be a normal person. Like neurotypicals don't understand just how bored a human being can be unless you have ADHD, because basically nothing is stimulating enough to make you satisfied, and you are just desperate for anything, and nothing can actually like make you feel satisfied. But then if you hit something that does sort of scratch that itch, you hyper focus and you lose time to like being like lost in something. That's why I used to like hate flights, because flights were agony for me. I know people are like reminding me to eat and stuff like that. Like, don't worry, I'm still eating enough. I'm just not eating the bad amounts. Trust me, there's a long way for me to go before my lack of appetite is going to cause health problems. I am happy to not. I mean, everybody's issues are different, obviously. For a lot of people, appetite suppression can be a major problem. For me, I definitely think that it is a benefit for me at the moment with my current health goals and everything like that. You thought Area 51 was weird? Wait until you hear about Dulce Underground Base. It's insane. Purported laser combat with aliens, hybrid experiments. Is that the kind of stuff with like the people? I know that there's a conspiracy about like, I can't remember what they're called exactly, but it's like deep underground military bases. Maybe I should do an episode on that. I feel like that would be a really good episode of It's Probably Not Aliens. It's kind of outside of the UFO thing though, so maybe not. But we haven't recorded a podcast in a few weeks because Scott's on his honeymoon. But so I think next week is actually our first. Next week is our first recording since like July. So I'm pretty excited to get back, because I I've been texting with Scott a little bit, but I haven't talked to Scott since we were talking in person at the wedding. I have to pull an all-nighter and pop 57 melatonin gummies for boarding an airplane. I should try that sometime. Although I don't have to make a lot of flights anymore. Like most I fly to 2 places pretty much every year. One is to LA, which is like a 5-hour flight, which is bad, but it's not impossible. And if I was on something like this, I think I would be way happier to read my book or play Slay the Spire or something like that and be fine. When it comes to like the other one is to Chicago, and the flight to Chicago is like an hour, so it's not a problem. You haven't caught a live in ages. Well, Ray Cullen, thank you for coming. The alleged security dude is named Philip Schneider, and he has a gem of batshittery. Nice. Where did I miss some stuff? Deep underground military bases sounds pretty interesting, though. Yeah, it's a conspiracy that like the U.S. has a series of military bases that are like kilometers under the earth, where like they do all of their weird secret experiments. I've always been interested in like looking into that one, but yeah. I tend to I kind of want to do more conspiracy debunking stuff on Step Back. I think that Step Back, obviously with like the success of the Ancient Apocalypse video, shows that like I could probably stand to talk more about conspiracy theories, but yeah, I think that I think that I should do more of it, and something that's more like underground U.S. military bases feels more like a Step Back thing, because I would love for It's Probably Not Aliens to keep itself at least in like the either history or science fiction, like more like alien stuff for now. Obviously we can branch out if we start running out of content, but it's a pretty deep well. Whew. Oh, I guess I should fucking answer some questions, huh? We got a few questions, so let's see what we got here. Is Matt Lipton in the house? Let's see. All right. Let's see. All right. I have a friend who's recently expressed some iffy opinions regarding immigrants, namely that Ottawa is becoming too dominated from people not from here instead of real Canadians. He's not a Nazi or anything. He actively hates Trump, but I fear this is the kind of opinion that would lead down a dark path. But I am not well versed enough on issues of immigration to argue against that confidently. What would I say the next time that comes up? As somebody who is married to an immigrant and knows several people who have immigrated to this country, I would point out that Canada is already a very hard country to immigrate to. It is an extremely hard country to get into. We have probably some of the most restrictive immigration policies of any country. I mean, there's obviously some other examples like, the Emirates, where like you can't even get citizenship unless you're like, Emirati, or like Japan, where like their immigration is actually fucking crazy. But where there's like people who've lived there for like centuries who haven't gotten citizenship. Like there's people in Japan where like generations go by and they can't even get citizenship. But Canada has a pretty, like, especially compared to like the US, we have a pretty harsh immigration system that is very much based on only accepting people if they are going to be economically useful for Canada, which means that not only do we not accept as many immigrants as we can and should, but also that our country is one that is, as I mentioned, as we had a whole conversation during this show, is one of negative population growth of like, domestic like births, and immigration is the only way that our population keeps even stable, let alone growing. And Canada has a lot of resources and a lot of room to grow. Furthermore, there's a self-selection in that, where because of our immigration system, the immigrants that come here are like not that this is like this should be a requisite, but like even from like a very like mercenary standpoint, the immigrants that we bring in are very highly educated, very well off, and they are very entrepreneurial. They start more businesses. They like, you know, participate more in volunteering. They overall contribute more than, you know, your native born Canadian to the world. And furthermore, if you want to go in the actual deep sense, unless you are part of the, you know, First Nations of this country, we're all fucking immigrants. Just some of us, you know, earlier than others. And so unless you are like, you know, I feel like you don't have any right in Canada to complain about immigrants unless you are a member of like one of the First Nations. And so, yeah, that's the main arguments I would say, is that we don't accept that many immigrants. The ones that we do bring in have, like, there's lots of data that shows that they are an overwhelming net benefit to society, and furthermore, they're, so not only are they good, but they're necessary to keep the population stable. And also, like, we're a settler colonial country where almost everybody who lives here has ancestry from somewhere very far from here. And unless you are, like, you know, a Haudenosaunee person, you don't really have much to, or part of the many nations of this country that existed before. You don't really have much legs to stand on. Like, even me, like, the closest thing to, like, what, like, a conservative would call an old stock Canadian that there would be, like, you know, my family immigrated here in the fucking 17th century. In the grand scheme of time, like, the first people, like, the, you know, the indigenous people of this country immigrated here 10,000 years ago. There's no beating that. We showed up yesterday by their scale. Not to mention also, like, there's all, like, you know, maybe there's, like, the talk about, like, crime and stuff like that. Well, like, immigrants are far more likely to be victims of... It's sort of like mental illness in that immigrants are far more likely to be victims of crime than to be criminals. All right, next question is for Mia, so we'll just give that a skip. Why do Western countries have a positive idea of Mustafa Kemal Ataturk? I often see Western historians and pundits say that he was a hero for Turkey, while every country surrounding Turkey has valid reasons to hate him for his Turkish nationalism. Mostly, I think that the sort of positive view of Mustafa Ataturk comes from, like, or Ataturk, Mustafa Kemal, aka Ataturk, come from the fact that he was, like, you know, he is because of his emphasis on secularization. Like, to a lot of the sort of standard historical narratives, Ataturk took over from the Ottoman Empire when it was in collapse, and you know, standardized the Turkish language, and moved away from, like, you know, power of the religious elite and the aristocracy, and moved towards a republic with a president and, like, you know, a more democratic form of government. And his whole, you know, orchestrating the Armenian genocide thing just kind of gets talked about less. All right. Yes, people are talking about the sort of thing about crime and the main thing that, like, what happens is that this is going to sound familiar to the Americans, but it's a Canadian thing. But, like, the main thing is that Canada, like all places, has, like, you know, organized crime and gangs and crime like all other countries do. And very often, crime is, you know, brought from people who are in marginalized communities who are trying to make a living, and they are shut out from more typical and legitimate forms of advancing them in their careers. So there are different ethnic enclaves, which of marginalized people who are trying to make lives for themselves. 100 years ago, that would have been Irish and Italians trying to make their doing organized crime, which is basically just like a sort of way of organized crime in many ways is just like ethnic self-governance with their own sort of enforcement angles to it. Not to say that there isn't horrible stuff they get up to, but that is in a way is a lot of what it is. Just back then we would call it a mafia and we would think it was cool and we would write books about it and movies and stuff. But today we call them gangs because the people who engage in it are not white, and or at least the people who are the most marginalized in our society are the ones who aren't white, and so turn to these things more often. And even though the fact that most crime is just done by white people anyway, just by sheer numbers, but anytime gang violence happens in I don't know, Brampton or something like that, it always gets brought up oh yeah, it's a gang of Caribbean people or something like that, and it'd be oh boy, all right, yeah, blame the people of color, blah blah blah. It's the other thing too is that a lot of Anyways. Let's see. Hey, long-time watcher, first-time chatter, do you engage in any mutual aid work? And if so, do you have any advice on being helpful while avoiding overextending? Well, if I had advice for avoiding overextending, I wouldn't be in the situation that I'm in now. But find a thing that you like doing, and try to find a way to do it with other people that is for a good cause. That sounds really vague, but if you are going to get into mutual aid or volunteer work and you aren't doing something that you like doing, at least in some capacity, it either has to be something you like doing or with people that you like doing stuff with. So, you might want to get to know the culture of the different mutual aid networks in the place you live. But if you like making food, Food Not Bomb's a great organization. If you like to give out free food. If you have certain skills or things you like doing, and if you're, depending upon how social you are, there's all sorts of different things you could do, but make sure that you're either doing something that you like or doing stuff with people that you like. And to avoid overextending is to just make it so that it's a thing that you enjoy and look forward to. That would be the easiest way to accomplish that. Do I engage in any mutual aid work? Well, I do some volunteer work. As I said, I'm volunteering for this sort of project that the city has as part of a sort of multiculturalism initiative that I like participating in. I like doing. This is my second time that I've participated in doing it, and I enjoy doing it. As far as that goes, there's other forms of mutual aid stuff. I should do more is the answer. But that's mostly I was sort of involved with the NDP Riding Association where I live, but I'm not a very important member of that organization, and with a kid, it's just it's way too busy for me to maintain. So, yeah. Anyways, have you seen Barbie yet, and what did I think? We haven't talked about it yet. I did see Barbie. I saw Barbie last weekend. It was all right. I liked it. It was funny. I did not think that what's it called? A movie based on Barbie would go to the places that movie went. I was pleasantly surprised by. I wasn't surprised by that because everyone had been talking about how wacky it got. But I'm surprised in a general sense that it went the way it did, and I'm happy for it. I think that's cool. I have some minor quibbles that I get there's a couple things that I'm that it's a little bit eye rolly, but overall those are minor in comparison. and overall the fun of the movie and the enjoyable parts of the movie definitely outweigh like the sort of parts that made me a little bit like, oh, okay. But I mean, it's the best Barbie movie that America Ferrera heading, former Hillary Clinton campaign, what's it called, surrogate America Ferrera would get on board for, is what that is to summarize all of my like my eye rolling stuff about it. It's that. But I liked it. Ryan Gosling was really fun. Margot Robbie was really fun. Even like the teenage girl was fun. It was overall, I enjoyed it. Will Ferrell was also great in it. Yeah. Solid B+ movie. Yeah. Michael Cera, yeah. Michael Cera was fucking amazing. Loved Michael Cera. He was very good in that movie too. He's Alan. He's Ken's best friend who can wear all the same clothes or whatever. All right. I asked this a while ago, but I forgot to rewatch to see if it was answered. I would consider myself a social democrat mostly because I'm not able to picture how a fully or at least majoritively socialist country would work. It seems like it would, pardon the overused and oversimplified argument, make a lot of innovation much harder to occur, as well as a bunch of other logistical obstacles that seem to only work with a capitalist framework. What are your recommendations for books or videos that dive into how the intricacies of a socialist country would run? Okay. So, specifically, you're looking for book and video recommendations. I'm trying to think of some really good ones. My favorite book of sort of socialist economics in a more modern sense is The People's Republic of Walmart. I think that's a really good one. I feel like it's a really solid book for understanding things. As far as I could try to answer and speak to some of these questions. And I think that the innovation angle is that if you look at like the actual data about like what innovation, where innovation actually comes from. I think there's like a book called, what is it? It's not a socialist book, but it's a book called like Where Ideas Come From or something like that. And there's a few factors that show that they are more that regardless of like the kind of organization of a society that exists, there are factors that cause innovation that really are regardless of any of the incentives. Like, it turns out that if you study human psychology, like the kinds of things that like a capitalist system incentivize for innovation, or say incentivize innovation, don't really. Like financial incentives and like bonuses and stuff like that have been shown to be, if anything, worse at promoting innovation. The things that people have found, and this has been done by like private companies trying to find ways to increase innovation, have been very not counterintuitive, but have been very surprising in a way. So the first one, the big one, is that Google being a company that designs technology, they're trying to increase innovation, right? Like solve problems, think of new products, those kinds of things. They tried to give like $2,000 bonus if you discover, if you make a new bug fix, or if you make if you invent a new product or something like that. $2,000. That'll incentivize people to do it. Turned out it didn't really work. So they tried to think of some other things, and the main thing that worked, surprisingly enough, the most effective thing that worked for Google was what's called 20% time, which was that on Fridays, the people who worked at Google were not told what to work on. They could work on anything they wanted, whatever they thought was interesting. It could be like it could be any project, any like sort of whim, any sort of experimentation, whatever they were interested in, they could do. Apparently this 20% time resulted in the largest increase in like bug fixes and new products that they've ever seen. It turns out that what people need to have innovation, to really innovate, is they need economic security. People don't really have a lot of opportunity to be creative and think of new things if they find themselves economically vulnerable. So giving them a salary and benefits that mean that they're not worried about making ends meet, right? Or they're not worried about, something coming up that might ruin their lives. That's the first thing, is people being economically comfortable. The second thing is autonomy. People are way more creative if they feel like they have some sort of ownership or control over the thing that they are working on. It could be like, and so like, giving and giving them the resources to sort of do that. Those two factors are more responsible. And also, the third thing is connection. They need to have regularly connect and interface with other people, because ideas are not useful unless they breed. So so encouraging innovation, you don't really need a government system or a capitalist system or anything. You just need to create those conditions under any sort of structure whatsoever. The thing, though, is that a lot of capitalist systems work under sort of an assumption of what's called homo economicus, and they think that people are only motivated by the self-interested acquisition of personal wealth, which turns out to be true to like an extent and like to a certain point. Like people definitely, when they're like, economically struggling, definitely are incentivized by financial things. But people who are like, but if you want people to innovate specifically, if you want people to think of new ideas, they need to not be worried about making rent. And they do need to be like given some control and interest in their own work. And they need to have regular opportunities to network and talk about their ideas with other people, which you can create in any sort of scenario, really. And also there's the other thing too that Finn Townsley pointed out, which is that a lot of times what we claim to be innovations that happen under capitalism when you look at like the actual patent filing and stuff like that, they have more credit given to like university research labs and like government, like some oftentimes in the US, like military research projects. Like a lot of times, a lot of like what a corporation will claim was like innovation under their own company was just that they gave money to a laboratory at a university, and then they just claimed right to whatever products came out of that laboratory. Most of the time when you like have like industrial research places, you're just finding new ways to extend the patent on your tuberculosis medication so that you can keep charging people inordinate amounts of money so that they can cure a disease. One thing is for the smartphone is the US Navy. I mean, the smartphone is the result of hundreds of patents. A lot of them come from various military contracts and various things. Capitalism invented Teflon all by themselves by accident. I mean, the other thing too is that it's not like impossible for private entities to have foster places of innovation. Google has a lot of innovation. They patent shit constantly because they invested and they created these conditions. So I feel like innovation just for me feels like more of a organizational structure thing than it is like whether or not you need capitalism in order to do it. If there is like an advantage of capitalism for like advancing society that like your straight up like communist system doesn't have, it's sort of like modularity and like the sort of like I think the term is actually called optionality, which I'll finish this and then it's 2:00, so the stream should be over soon. But optionality, which is this idea that that like things should be like for things to get better, things should be allowed to fail, but with limited consequences for said failure. Like, the example that you would give is like the restaurant industry. The restaurant industry, outside of like, a handful of like mega corporations, is mostly made up of like lots and lots of small businesses. And you'll notice that restaurants are fairly resilient when it comes to economic shocks. You don't seem to find a situation in which there's nowhere to eat, right? Like, you can go pretty much anywhere in the world and you will find restaurants somewhere. It's a resilient industry, and one where like there's always new things coming out. There's always new ideas. Like, it's a very fresh and reinvigorating thing. The reason for that is because so many of them are these like small modular businesses that, if you know anything about the restaurant industry, go out of business all the time. Restaurants have a very, very poor, like 1 year lifespan situation. And, but they're small enough that when they go down, the entire, like, they don't need, like if a bank went down, they'd have to go to like the government and get a bailout, and like a whole bunch of things would be like people's lives would be like irreparably fucked. When a restaurant goes down, like a handful of people are out of work, a person is out a bunch of money, that's it. But like, because like those individual small parts are very fragile and can like go out of business very fast, the overall industry sort of has this like Darwinian evolution happen, where like the strongest and like the most like kind of like the best designed type of like firms really are the ones that succeed. And like a sort of centrally planned communist economy doesn't really have that kind of thing. And this is why I would argue that I'm more of an anarchist. Like, I'm an anarcho-communist, and I think that in many ways, like, things should be more small and modular, and should be in a situation so that if they fail, you don't have like an entire country without electricity or something like that, right? Like things should be able to be limited enough in scope that if they go down, they don't cause too much pain, enough that we can have systems in place so that everybody who is affected can recover no problem. This is why like I like things like communes and small communities and things that are like very small and very autonomous, and would allow for more experimentation in different forms of governance. Like, I actually don't really care too much to like think of like elaborate political theories for how everything would be solved, because I would prefer that if we kept things small enough and we just had like a sort of culture of experimentation politically, socially, economically, and like, different types of ways of doing things, and like they were small enough so that if they went down, you didn't take down entire countries with it, we would have our civilizations would evolve overall into a much more robust and healthy direction. Whew. Okay. That was an intense stream. We went a lot of places today. So that's going to be all for today, guys. I'm going to go have lunch, I guess, and then go back to my volunteer work. So you guys have been great. Remember how I said I might stop the stream early at the beginning? Holy shit. Be good to each other. All right. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Be good. Be cool. And I'll see you guys next week.